This is Rebecca Lowe, or Rebecca Lua if you listen to Suboptimal Radio, and you are listening to Men in Blazers on the NBC Sports Network.
It's unbelievable!
From the Embassy Road studios in the crap part of Soho, it's the Men in Blazers podcast.
St. Paddy's Day special.
Oh, happy St. Patrick's Day.
We
Rog.
drink Guinness on every pod, so how can we make this like...
Extra special. I think we just need to drink more Guinness.
Okay, let's do it, David. You love St. Paddy's
Oh,
Day.
I love it. I properly love it. I wake up, I do my little dance for the kids. I've done the dance on the pod before. You've never been very impressed with it. I like it because I always wear a bit of green, although well, I'm sort of wearing a tiny sort of bluey green today. Green is a good colour for me, Roger. I think it brings out the green in my hazel eyes.
Honestly, it brings out the hepatitis look-alike in me. I can't wear it. I
not
can't
your
wear
colour.
green, nor can I wear yellow.
Yeah, you are wearing green trousers
Yep.
today. Trousers.
They're a
as
Donegal.
my father would say.
They are a Donegal
Tweed.
And
Lovely.
I wore them intentionally
Really
to
good
commune with the Irish people, a people I respect deeply. I think their civilization and traditions are beautiful. We will talk more about that throughout the podcast. It's a massive week, though, David.
Massive.
Bigger than that.
It is. It's perhaps the biggest week ever.
Champions League.
Champions League.
El Clasico on the horizon.
Yeah.
March Madness about to start.
Now,
David.
we both properly love college basketball.
Adore it.
I know. When I first came to the United States, I first came and then I went down to South Carolina.
Had Naismith invented basketball?
Yeah,
though?
about then, spring break, 1985, and it was the middle of the ACC tournament. I didn't know what the ACC was. I didn't know what a tournament was.
The ACC.
I don't think I'd ever
The ACC.
seen basketball outside the British Basketball League.
Yeah, which was like English people who would run up and down without scoring points, and there was always one American player on each team who was too small to make it in America.
Alton Bird.
Yes, that
he
was his
played
name.
for Crystal Palace.
Yes.
So I used to go to Crystal Palace and go and watch the basketball.
He was the only one who could ever get the ball actually through the hoop, which
Yeah,
made
exactly.
him a superstar in
You'd
English
end up at the end of
basketball.
4 quarters, the score would be 16-12 or something like that. But so I'd never really seen decent basketball, and I certainly hadn't seen decent basketball at my boarding school, Mercersburg, where Benicio del Toro, or known as Benicio del
he's all
Turnover,
elbows.
was the starting point guard. So I then I then ended up watching, just being glued to the ACC tournament, the Big East tournament, and I loved it. And then when the NCAA tournament happened, that was just amazing stuff.
You know, I felt when I arrived for the 1996 UMass team, would it have been?
Yeah.
I think famed for Marcus Camby.
Yeah.
But I just loved the Puerto Rican backcourt of Edgar Padillo and Carmelo Travioso. And
Wow.
the thing that sealed it for me was that they had a forward who I think his name was Dana Dingle. Always
great
like that.
name.
Yeah, I was totally wedded to them. And they went on a darling run. And when they were dumped, I felt absolutely crushed. And I always fear loving again because it's absolutely so jarring. But this season, I'm going to back a winner.
Yeah.
Back a big team and go all the way. I'm
Yeah.
all in on Wofford. The slow and steady and small wins the race. And I'd
Yeah.
also like to buy an Airedale Terrier. So I'm at Wofford Terriers. I'm
Wow.
throwing my whole weight. But although I kind of like Northern Iowa, I like watching Seth Tuttle.
Yeah, I can't imagine anybody's going to beat Kentucky. Maybe Wisconsin
Wofford.
have got a chance.
Wofford.
But I'm all in with the University at Buffalo. That's who I'll be cheering for against
Wofford.
West Virginia this weekend. Okay, we're back, Roger. We're back.
From our travels.
Yeah, you've been in England, and then we went to Texas.
I've been in another century.
You have been in another century, and it's like the 14th century you've been in. You haven't even gone through the Renaissance or the Enlightenment yet.
Some areas I went
Yeah.
to. I went on trips to cities I'd never been to.
Okay,
before.
where'd you go? You went to Stoke, you went to Leicester, you went to
I
Birmingham.
arrived and drove overnight to
Yeah.
arrive late night into Leicester.
Yeah. Leicester.
Shocked immediately that when we crossed the city limits,
Yeah.
there was no sign that said birthplace of Arlo White.
Yeah, why not?
Just think of the tourist dollars, David,
Yeah,
they'd
I
get.
know.
The thing that shocked me is that when you go to Dublin and drink
Yeah.
a Guinness,
Uh-huh.
it tastes like, honestly, it tastes like heaven.
Yeah,
like God has
ambrosia.
delivered it
You're
into your
right.
mouth.
Yeah. Liquid gold.
Leicester is crisp city. And even though I arrived at 1 o'clock, I went right to the bar.
You mean potato chips?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They call them crisps in England.
Crisps.
They call it Crisp City.
Yeah.
I went to the bar and I felt obliged to order several packets of crisp chips,
Yeah.
thinking they'd be like, you know, in Dublin, Guinness taste. I thought the
Yeah.
chips would taste different themselves
Yeah.
in Leicester. I ate 12 packets.
And they didn't taste any different.
Tasted
It's
identical.
only 100 miles from London, Rog, Leicester. But it's like a different.
100 years.
It's like a different era.
Well, it wasn't. It wasn't. I went to Birmingham to interview Brad Guzan, who's a remarkable, really an unbelievable bloke.
The accent in Birmingham is like where people they constantly have a cold. Rog, instead of saying Birmingham, they say Burbagub.
I don't like to say this about an entire, but it does honestly sound like they're just consistently farting with their mouth when they speak. It's like Detroit, Birmingham, but much uglier. And without that kind of fake watches plate.
Shinola.
Yeah, I hate that brand.
I like the brand.
I can't stand it.
I tend to be positive about
You
things.
do. And then I arrived in Manchester the second that David De Gea's girlfriend, Aderne Garcia, all over the newspapers, she described the city as, quote, uglier than the back of a fridge.
Wow.
Which is, I think,
She's
harsh.
turned a corner and become way more positive about the city then.
It's harsh on the back of fridges, as far as I'm concerned. But the worst, Dave, or the best, it truly amazed me, was Stoke. I went there to spend the afternoon with Azimir Begovic.
Stoke-on-Trent.
It is post-apocalyptic Britain, David. Oh. I mean, I should say the stadium is amazing in that it was just packed with, it was like almost like a community centre. There was a meeting of cancer survivors in one board room. There was a meeting of a car rally group were meeting. I mean, it's clearly the centre of the community. So Stoke City, remarkable. Yeah, absolutely, truly a club. I'd love to learn more about what they do in their place within the 6 towns that surround it. But my God, those 6 towns, there were literally kids wandering around the streets. Imagine streets of a semi-deserted British city with not a chain store to be seen. Just tiny rundown stores with crude puns in the name. Floors for Thought, a home furnishing store. My mum would love that. Our Souls, a shoe store.
Clever.
Bizarre. And there were small gangs.
There had to be a hairdresser called Curl Up and Die, I imagine.
And it probably would be boarded over like the rest of the stores. The only things that were thriving were the pubs and the chip shops.
Good.
And all over the streets, there were just small gangs of kids, 7, 8, 9, 10 years of age,
Feral
David.
children.
Feral children. Feral. I mean, it was hard to tell how old they were because I'm not very good at decoding the ages of mole men. But they were wandering around in little groups. And I saw a group of 7 to 9-year-old girls, 5 or 6 of them. They all had, one had a brick in her hand. The other had a hammer. One girl, the smallest one, had a 5-foot plank of lumber casually over her shoulder. And when I had to nip out the car to get my computer out, my laptop out my bag, I panicked as they slowly moved towards me.
A group of 7 to 9-year-old girls.
I was caught between, outside the car. It felt like you had to get underground as quickly as possible it felt like zombies had taken over. And I ran panting into the car, locked the door. It was like Evade or Die, World War Z. # pray for Jeff Cameron.
Yeah. So this, I think of this as being the North, but it's not really the North. It's the North as in it's beyond London, which is paved with gold, where the streets are paved with gold in London. But it's really, this would be referred to as the Midlands, I would say.
Yep.
It's not the North, it's not the South. Do you really have that in America? I suppose the Mid-Atlantic. But you don't really have a word for the sort of the Midlands.
The Midwest.
Middle. Well, the Midwest sounds more glamorous, the Midwest.
Yeah, we call it the West Midlands. You call it the Midwest over here.
Midlands.
But it's the area that somehow birthed and gave the world Arlo White.
And you had dinner with Arlo White,
I did. I watched the Champions League with Arlo White. I watched Chelsea, the game in which we discovered there was a God and she's French, Davo.
There's no way that God is French.
I watched it with Arlo White. Watching Champions League with Arlo White, it was like, I felt like being there when Jonathan and Jennifer Hart came together. It was just amazing. It was my dinner with Arlo. It's a good movie to make.
Yeah, we should have made that film.
If you're just operating by habit, then you're not really living.
So what did you do? Where did you go?
We went to I'll tell you where we went in a second. I will say, the thing that struck me about Arlo, I mean, he's an American hero, right? Bona fide, the voice that has given us many of the terms with which we experience the Premier League.
Yeah, and he's fantastic. Meaty French forehead just is...
It's poetry.
The incorrect sending off of Kieran Gibbs, like everything. He's just amazing.
But he is they all are, Lee Dick, totally oblivious to the extent that they have become kind of de facto American touchstones for the Premier League action. Because he drops his poetry. Yeah. And then the final whistle goes, he meaty French foreheads away. And then he just unplugs his microphone, walks into the street, and he's just not recognised in England. He's like that guy searching for Sugarman, massive in South Africa, but living a life in penury in Detroit.
It's like Clark Kent. He's Superman in his day job in America, and he's Clark Kent.
Exactly. I kept saying, you are huge in America. He's like, I can't. We have no way of knowing.
Wow.
And he took me to a beautiful place.
Yeah.
Well, not really. I couldn't tell whether it was the most amazing place I've ever been or the most terrifying, terrible place.
Okay, is this the menu for the place here?
Hotel football.
Hotel football.
Yeah, a new hotel / restaurant
Yeah.
right up against Old Trafford, owned by famous hoteliers Gary Neville,
And it has
Phil Neville, Ryan Giggs, and Paul Scholes, a very famous English hotelier.
So they own the hotel football.
Yeah, and they've chosen to open this huge complex that has a football pitch on the roof where I played with Arlo, and you can see some of the great images on our Instagram
I would
feed.
love to have been at the meeting where they came up with the name Hotel Football. I mean, what were the other suggestions?
That
do
they
you think?
discarded. The
Yeah,
ones that didn't
football
make the grade.
hotel, foot hotel,
They've chosen to open it.
Hoball.
In the first season at United, have not won a trophy for 2 years since 1989. Great timing, lads. And I brought you back the menu because I did save
From
it.
Cafe Football.
Yeah, Cafe Football.
Oh, there's a lot of arguments about that name.
They had some great food offerings. Nev's Noodle Pot,
Yeah.
which I didn't quite understand whether it was actually made of edible foodstuffs or not. But the Giggsy is a
Give you
sausage.
some idea, by the
A
way.
large sausage.
What immediately stands out on the menu, the starters, one of the starters at the Cafe Football is loaf of bread. That's an amazing, I've never seen that on a menu. Loaf of bread.
It's chef's signature dish.
It's amazing, loaf of bread.
Yeah.
It's not sliced.
I had a scones.
Yeah.
I had a
which is-
scones.
Lots of skulls.
It was a steak and kidney pie.
Yeah.
I actually thought it would be I thought there'd be some ginger themed aspect to it, but it was a very tasty ginger pie. It made me think every dish is named after a famous, semi-famous footballer. What would a Davo be?
You mean what would a Davo be if it was a dish?
If we opened a Men in Blazers pub,
Cafe Blazers.
yeah,
At the hotel, as
Hotel
part of the
Blazers.
Hotel Blazers.
Hotel Blazers.
I think it would be a chicken tikka masala.
You do?
I love Indian food. I love the
guessed
chicken
that.
tikka masala. But sauce would have to be mild. I love hot food, but I have an inadvertent hiccup reaction to all hot food, so I'd have to bring the spice down a little bit.
I would never have guessed that.
Yeah, I love that.
If you died, and then I opened a posthumous restaurant, and I named a dish after you, the Davo
Yeah.
would probably be sushi served on a naked model.
Yeah,
to your table.
good. That would be a lovely tribute to me.
A Rog.
Yeah, what would a Rog be? Some form of pie.
Probably a Guinness.
A Guinness.
Meal
A
in a
Guinness
can.
pie. How about a Guinness
Our
pie?
main course
Rog?
is a Guinness.
That would be so good.
So that was England. God,
Yeah.
I cried when I landed back here in America. I cried. I felt like I
your
was.
journey had been hellish.
Well, the journey's always hellish back
Yeah.
from England. Thank you,
Yeah.
British Airways. Unbelievable ethic. And it's my favourite thing when I'm flying back from England, because British Airways continuously have just broken aircraft that mean it's 10, and they don't tell you it's going to be a 10-hour wait. They always, it's going to be another 45 minutes till we can. They do it. They let you down incrementally. Watching American businessmen just explode at English customer service is just a fascinating clash of cultures, and I adore watching it. It's the only thing that kept me sane. But I cried because, well, number one, I was seeing you. Number two, we were in Texas, Austin. I landed in Dallas in the end and drove through the night to Austin. Unbelievable driving through Texas. Their terrain, just huge car companies with thousands of cars. And I drove past an RV store that was selling RVs. It must have gone on for about 20 minutes as I was just RV after RV
Do you
after
think that's
RV.
Dave Fishwick's dream, to have an RV superstore in
Texan
Texas?
Dave. We'll have
It's
to ask
Texan
him.
Dave
We'll have
Fishwick.
to ask him when we get him on the show.
What can we do to get Dave Fishwick to Texas?
I went to an amazing Czech food store, Czech Stop, in West Texas. The GFOP sent me there, adored it. It was absolutely mobbed at about 1 o'clock in the morning, just pumping out hot Czech pastries.
Wow.
Full of Texans, crashing in a load of GFOPs in there. But mostly I was going to see you, David,
Texans, they're probably called.
and play a really rather terrible gig at South by Southwest.
I don't think it was a terrible gig, Rog. It
worse
was
than
great.
that.
It was. We had a great time down there. I had a fantastic time. I missed you down there. Picked up a little red Mini, Rog. I don't know whether I wanted to call it something. Whether it was Super Mario, whether it was Broj. I thought Broj was the good name for the Mini. Mini Countryman from Mini of Austin. That was fantastic.
I feel like if a car was called Brod, it would have a really rasping exhaust.
It had an
One of those
excellent
really
grill.
annoying
It had a
ones.
very shiny grill, Rog. And it was bright red. Anyway, I loved that car. Drove it around. Spent some wonderful time with my daughter. My oldest daughter lives down there in Austin, Texas. Great meet up with a bunch of GFOPs at Fado of Austin. A really proper football pub
Gutted
down
to have
in
missed that,
Austin,
by the way.
Texas. Hundreds of GFOPs turned up, Rog. About 20 of them in blazers with photocopies of our patch on their chest. Fans of... And what was most impressive about Austin is usually we get a lot of Chelseas, a lot of Man Cities, a lot of Liverpools, and definitely a lot of Liverpools down in Austin. A lot of Uniteds, a lot of Tottenhams.
A lot of Tottenhams.
Down in Austin, we got Bristol Cities, we got Barrows, we got Glasgow Celtics, we got a lot of MLS fans, a lot of Houston fans, a lot of Kansas City fans. I met a Villa fan, Roger. We never get a Villa fan turn up at any of our gigs. So it was just great to meet everybody. Held a baby. Really great time.
First time you met your son?
No, this was not one of mine.
Oh, really?
It's the first time. I mean, I haven't held many babies who are not my own babies.
When you sent me
having
that
had
email,
so many
I just
babies.
assumed that someone had introduced you.
No,
This is your baby.
Not my baby. Not
It
my
wasn't
baby.
your baby.
Not my baby.
It was a baby.
Not my baby. It was a baby. And great time down there at Fado. And then I enjoyed the show. Really great guests, Rog. Really, really great guests. Jamal Charles guested on the show. And Victor Cruz.
Yep. I
Really
thought
nice
a lot
guys.
about God. And by the way, wearing Victor Cruz's chains,
Yeah.
it's probably one of the highlights of my professional
Yeah.
broadcasting career. I actually had to go and go to a chiropractor
Yeah.
on Monday to work out some of the kinks just from wearing one of his chains overnight.
Yeah.
He is an impressive, athletic gentleman, not on the field as an NFL player, but just to wear all of that
Oh,
crap.
he's also a great NFL player. I love the fact there are two highlights for me of the live show. One was when he talked about being partly Puerto Rican, and when he said it, this entire crowd of Texas, he's looked at and he was remarked because he's obviously used to
New York
saying that
City,
line,
and the crowd normally go mad.
insane, and not honestly crickets, not a single
No,
Puerto
one
Rican.
person did it,
Oh,
but it was
what's
also
that?
the same person who cheered when I mentioned Breck Shea.
Yeah, exactly. And secondly, when you came out wearing your Everton scarf and you're like Everton, and you did your customary pause for the
Yeah.
Everton fans.
Yeah.
Not one
That's
Everton.
nonsense.
There was no Everton fans down there.
That's
Usually you're
nonsense.
surrounded by Everton fans.
There were dozens of Everton fans in Everton jerseys. They were just incredibly shy, and were not picked up by the microphones. I just want to say two quick things.
Yeah.
First of all, talking about Everton, the Roberto Martinez film,
Yeah.
Day in the Life of a Manager, also
Brilliant
played
film.
on
Heard
Saturday.
from so many people how much they enjoyed that film.
They enjoyed it because he's such a remarkable bloke. Win
Yeah.
or lose, we will talk about
No,
him.
you did a great job.
And
Rob.
secondly, I am somewhat shocked at the moment, David.
Yeah.
20 years to the day that we played our gig at South by Southwest, Radiohead released The Bends. 20 years, David.
That's amazing.
Just felt like saying that. Where do
That's
we
a
go
lo-
from here?
How
The
did
words
we get
coming
to
out
that
all
much
weird.
time?
If you don't know the album, because a lot of our audience were probably 14 years from being born, 15 years from being born when it came out. Black Star, just go and put it on
Yeah.
Spotify. It still sounds beautiful today, as it did when it came out. St. Patrick's Day, quick word.
Yeah.
We did have our March of Gingers. We talked about doing a million gingy march.
I got
We're men of
angry
action.
yesterday. I
We're
got
men of
angry
action.
yesterday. I got legitimately angry about the plight of the ginger in this country and around the world, Rog.
You did?
Yeah.
The more we shot with the amazing GFOPs, we had 8 GFOPs who were gingy from the
Yeah.
New York area, came into the
Yeah.
panic room.
Yeah.
Remarkably gay.
Yeah.
We wanted to side with them. We wanted to lift them up. We wanted to do something.
Yeah.
We'd want to stop the madness, the anti-gingerism.
We had 50 coming. 42 of them were detained by the police, detained by the authorities on the way, Rog.
The more we taped,
Yeah.
the more angry we became. And I'm glad. Someone tweeted us, IB Vanma, tweeted us an article that's made me calmer, made me feel better. The University de Breton-Sud in France discovered that redheads are approached
Breton-Sud.
far less by men and women in bars. In social situations, men will approach blondes the most, brunettes the second most, redheads third. But they probe deeper, the French, as they so often do, and they discovered the men didn't approach the women, not because they find them less attractive, Davo. In fact, it was because they find them more attractive. They didn't approach them, the redheads, because of fear of rejection. The conclusion was redheads are not ugly or undesirable. Well done, French researchers. The opposite is true. Redheads are so desirable that most men think they are, quote, out of their league, so to speak. They don't approach. They rate redheads more sensuous and, I didn't read this bit, and promiscuous seeming. Both signifiers that would possibly help in the baby-making arena.
Wow.
This is great reporting.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing, David?
Yeah.
Fear of rejection.
More proof that God is not French, Rog, I would say.
So it's actually fear of rejection that stops redheads from ascending to their rightful place as leaders of the pack.
Yeah.
Gingers, nothing is as it seems.
Yeah.
Love thyself. King of courage.
Talking about St. Patrick's Day, Rog, the GFOPs at EA Sports are in the St. Patrick's Day spirit. They've bestowed upon us a special custom edition Robbie Keane Xbox to give away. It's part of their FIFA 15 Green Keane tournament. What we're asking for is your best ginger emoticon, Rog. We've put an example of one made by producer Lexi on our Instagram feed. Help eradicate anti-gingerism and get the Xbox, courtesy of EA Sports FIFA
It's an amazing
15.
Xbox. When you score, it just does a bizarre flip goal celebration in your own living room. but the emoticon, it's because in our Million Gingy March,
Yeah.
we were upset. Apple have just released, we talked about on the television show last
Yeah.
night, 300 new emoticons representing
Yeah.
every race.
Yeah.
The only race or ethnicity not represented by Apple emoticons is...
Gingers. Disgusting.
Stop it, Apple.
Awful.
Disgusting.
Awful. Okay, Rog.
Steve Jobs would be rolling in his grave.
Well, more travels ahead, Rog. I'm off to Orlando, taking the kids to Disney World
Oh, I
for
hate
spring
that
break.
place.
Couldn't be more excited. I love it. Happiest place on earth, Rog.
It is.
It is. How could Rog ever be happy in the happiest place on earth?
Is that true? No, I just hate being told to be happy. You can be happy.
I love
when you
being
feel
told
happy. I
I'm
hate
already happy.
birthdays.
They don't tell you to be happy.
I
They
know
just say,
don't.
"Oh, you're happy,"
I
and
hate
you
New Year-
go,
I hate-
"Yes,
it's why
I'm
I-
so happy."
It's why I hate New Year's Eve too. It's like you have to be happy, and sometimes you are, sometimes you're not, but you don't have to be told when to be happy.
When are you at your happiest?
Probably I think when one of ABBA's albums came out. It was when ABBA Arrival came out, and I got it on cassette. I think that moment was probably, as a youth, probably one of my happiest moments ever in my life. Watching Ferris Bueller's Day Off for the first time was
Made you
probably
happy.
as happy as I've ever been. And then when I was 17, I lived on a kibbutz and I milked cows for 7 months. Did the morning milking, and it was the most amazing experience of my life. So probably one of those 3 times, but not at Disneyland. Definitely not at
Lexi,
Disneyland.
all we've got to do is we need to get Roger cow. We need to get a cow, get a little plot of land somewhere in the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Just have you milk a cow in the
need to
morning.
work the land.
Everything need to work. Need to milk a cow. Need to use your hands.
I want my children being
work.
born and my marrying my wife.
Yeah, of course, those. Of course. Okay, we've got a packed show. We're going to break down Manchester United's dismantling, Rog, of Spurs. An old-fashioned dismantling. Chelsea's draw against scrappy Southampton and the Manchester City upset that set turf more alight. We recap the first 2 weeks of
Middle
an
earth.
MLS, and we welcome to the pod the executive producer of Netflix's new Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. He's a huge Arsenal fan, Robert Carlock.
Oh, another unbearable optimist. That's exactly what this podcast needs.
Oh, I'm an unbearable optimist. I'm an optimist, Rog. To the football. Let's crack open the Guinness. I think you need a Guinness today. Today of all days, the perfect day to enjoy a Guinness at 11 o'clock in the morning. Cheers, Rog.
To John O'Shea and his people.
Yeah. Stephen Quinn. Okay, Rog, we are now 29/38 of the way through the Premier League season. It was a weekend that saw Chelsea either drop points or gain a point, depending on how you want to go and look at it, but they took another step towards the title. City, meanwhile, left looking over their shoulder in the race for second. That
Slump
table,
shoulder. A
table
slump
is
shoulder.
getting all very jammed up, Rog. We're going to start right out with a team who seem to be rediscovering form, Rog. Manchester United 3, Tottenham 0. It was a high heel performance in what's been a season of crocs for Louis van Gaal's side. Goals from Marouane Fellaini, Michael Carrick, and Sugar Ray Wayne Rooney lift United past Harry Kane and co. United now just 2 points, Rog, behind City. Also 1 point behind Arsenal.
I mean, this is fascinating to watch, Davo, because all the talk before the game was of 2 teams meeting, one, a team with a plan and footballing intelligence. That would be Spurs under Pochettino. The other lacking any semblance of philosophy or a core sense of team. The surreal United of Louis van Gaal. And then the match, the 90 minutes, Davo, it's like watching one of those movies like Big or Face Off or Trading Places, like Cage and Travolta changing bodies. Because United, they reverted to the kind of United of Alex Ferguson. Spurs slapped back to the form we're used to in big games, the kind of performance that has its own special adjective, Spursy. It was very, very Spursy. And it was even more shocking that United went Oxford, not Brogues. Because it came after the FA Cup bum-whacking against Arsenal, in which Roy Keane went on English television when I landed. I watched this game. Roy Keane accused the United team of downing tools. This performance was the opposite.
Yeah, definitely. They played that kind of incisive, forward-passing, quick football that one expected of this team. We said last week that you look at the Man United starting lineup. Had you showed us that starting lineup before the beginning of the season, I think both of us would have said, that's a Premier League winning side. And many very smart people picked them to win the Premier League this year. But that's the first time that they've come up with a performance that actually approaches the performances of Arsenal and Liverpool.
A coherent lineup, David. Yeah. But I mean, they tweak week to week
Players
to week.
Playing in their own position, Rog.
Well, I was going to say, perhaps the crucial difference this week was that Van Gaal's hand was somewhat forced with the lineup tweaks. Angel Di Maria and Johnny Evans were suspended. Robin van Persie was injured. Falcao had been humiliated during the week by being forced to play with the under-21 team and being substituted in that game. Enter cuddly little Juan Mata, the most athletic beanie baby in world football for his first start since January, and Wayne Rooney. Wayne Rooney put in the unorthodox position of centre forward, David.
Playing up front. And once again, he has been, we've said it before, but he's been Manchester United's best player all season by far and had another incredible game.
He did. He didn't just have an incredible game. He had an incredible pre-game, apparently, Davo. Van Gaal revealed after the match that Wayne Rooney had called a players-only meeting in the team hotel on Saturday evening in which he delivered what Marouane Fellaini described as, quote, very important speech.
Whoa.
What do you think a Wayne Rooney motivational speech goes like, David?
Well, actually more, I was trying to think about what have been the great speeches that Marouane Fellaini has heard in his life. What is the benchmark by which he's measuring the powerful words, the oratory of a certain Wayne Rooney?
I think, the way I think about it, 'cause I've been trying to get my head around that very question. And the only thing I keep going back to, do you remember Saturday Night Live's Ronald Reagan?
Yeah.
The Master Brain sketch?
Oh, yeah.
In which the president appears dozy to journalists who enter the Oval Office. And then the second they leave, he just alters his personality completely and becomes an astute analyst and sharp as a tack world leader. Do you think in real life, David, when the cameras are gone, when the world's view is put away, Wayne has an inner Susie Orman?
I would say that I think that Wayne Rooney, and I just mark this down and we'll come back to it and we'll listen to it in 10 years. I think Wayne Rooney is going to be an exceptional TV pundit in his retired career because I think he is developing more and more and more an ability to articulate, and he's developing a brain. From where he was to where he is now in terms of just listening to a post-match interview with him and listening to him speak and listening to just actually not just the way he speaks, but actually what he says. I think he actually says something on the whole when he speaks to the press, and I think he'll end up being
on
a
Saturday
very
night boxing on
I
NBC.
think he'll be a very impressive pundit.
Yeah, I can just imagine him talking to the players, just like, recast your current problems into proactive goals, Marouane. And you, Phil Jones, people have got to learn if they don't have cookies in the cookie jar, they can't eat cookies.
It's depth for a footballer, Rog. That's deep
Whatever
stuff.
it was, Davo, it
Yeah.
worked. Because this was like the United of old. Carrick holding, Fellaini crashing through the middle behind Rooney, Daily Blink causing havoc down the flank. And the goals, Davo, Carrick. You talked about that on the show yesterday.
That header, everybody's talking, and no doubt we're going to talk about that amazing Raisins goal by Matty Phillips. But for me, the goal of the weekend was Carrick's header. The first goal was amazing because it's 3 forward passes in succession.
Yeah,
that
I think Van Gaal, actually, on that one, had told his players, just imagine you're passing the ball back to David De Gea.
Yeah,
do
exactly.
It,
do it forward.
Do it to the other
direction.
goalkeeper.
The second goal, Carrick's goal, I think that was the goal of the weekend because you do not see that headed goal hit ever. You just never see it that accurately. It's a slow ball. He has to generate all his own pace, and he just hits it. There's no good fortune. It went exactly to the millimetre of where he was aiming. An excellent goal. Carrick had an amazing game, not just holding in midfield, but it was the Carrick of yore, Rog. The Carrick who can make the passes that, frankly, no other English player in English football can make.
I was in Manchester last week, and I spoke to a lot of United fans who talked with disgust how Van Gaal appeared to have just lost any sense of the DNA of United, which is an attacking, risk-taking club under Ferguson, under Busby even before him, The DNA of United was to try and dismember opponents in the final third. This game it was just one game, Davo, and the narrative could soon snap back. It felt like this was when Van Gaal finally understood that kind of DNA, when the Old Trafford faithful bellowed attack, 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 which they had just a couple of weeks ago during the Sunderland game with derision when the ball kept going backwards towards De Gea. This time, the same words were roared with approval. Spurs couldn't retain possession. They were just pressed upon. United up their tempo. They actually made forward passes. Spurs just completed 17 passes in the first 45 minutes. Their performance was so leaden-footed. It reminded me of an amazing Roy Keane story that he told about Alex Ferguson. Spurs were playing Tottenham back in the day at home, and he was so pumped up and ready to play, and he was disgusted when Ferguson arrived. He just wanted to go and play football. He said, "Don't go on about Tottenham. We all know what Tottenham's about. They're nice and tidy, but we'll effing do them," was Roy Keane's words. Ferguson just walked into the Old Trafford locker room and looked at his team and said, "Lads, it's Tottenham," and then walked out. That's all he needed to tell them. Roy Keane said, "That was the entirety of Ferguson's team tour. It was brilliant. It's just Tottenham." This performance, Davo, was just Tottenham.
Yeah, well, they just gave up central midfield, Roger, and in the modern Premier League, defence seems to be mainly played in central midfield. And when you vacate central midfield, when you abrogate responsibility for the centre of the park, like Tottenham did in this game, you're going to lose. Suddenly, the space opened up for Manchester United, and they took advantage. And I think this could be an incredibly key game for United. Yes, it was only one game, but they've rediscovered the way they want to go and play football.
At Challengers Pod said, Tottenham have turned into deadbeat Rob Lowe. We had the amazing sight of a tactical substitution in 30 minutes. Dembele sent on for Townsend, but it made no difference because just 4 minutes later, Bentaleb was sloppy in possession, Dyer was somehow even sloppier, and Wayne Rooney drove through the gut of the Spurs lineup to slide home his 6th goal in 6 games. But the goal was just a platform, Davey.
It was a platform for comedy brilliance, comedy art, Rod.
And physical comedy.
And physical comedy executed to such a high degree. The knockout swoon, flat on his back, knocked out, just executed brilliantly. I defy you to try and execute that move yourself with that much faith. It's like one of those trust exercises in drama where you fall back and somebody's going to catch you, and there's nothing that catches you. You're going to hurt yourself doing that. Rog.
Yeah, I mean, for those of you who are under a rock and don't know what he was miming, the sun.
They got their hands somehow on a video shot by one of Wayne Rooney's mates of Rooney, of Stoke City's Phil Bardsley, in a fight. Him and Rooney have got gloves on.
Rooney said his wife was away, so he had mates over. Yeah. They've got huge boxing gloves on.
Yeah, well, not huge. They've got those little pad gloves
in Wayne Rooney's mini kitchen.
In his service kitchen, not in his main kitchen, in the service kitchen, and they're fighting and they're sort of circling around. Rooney's sort of holding. Rooney's really reaching out, sort of trying to measure his distance on his right. As they wheel around, I mean, Bardsley hits him with a left jab into the nose that just knocks Rooney straight out, and Rooney goes down, almost bangs his head on the centre island, Rog, in the service kitchen, and goes down. And somehow the Sun ended up with this tape, and in a statement that no doubt that Man United's PR department believed that all the fault was with the Sun here, not any fault, not any blame, not
what
any
is the world coming
responsibility
to?
Lies with Rooney
and his choice of mates who sell on these films to repulsive tabloid newspapers in the first place. I did love how they reported the fight took place in Rooney's mini kitchen. Yeah. So for me, the moral of the story is, well, it's not don't box if you're a professional soccer player, because it obviously did Rooney great to be knocked out, punched in the face. But the moral is don't box in your mini kitchen. Box in your full-size kitchen.
Yeah.
You can avoid all sharp corners.
You need more space he would have had. Anyway, a fantastic goal, Rog. Fantastic goal celebration.
Fantastic moment.
And he ended the conversation about it with that celebration. That's what was amazing, is that now, even though people might think the narrative before would have been, what an idiot doing this, how dare he, it's going to affect his performance, how dare he go and do this when United have been struggling this season. He scores that goal, he does that celebration, he completely puts it to bed.
Yeah. And then another beautiful moment in the 76th minute when Old Trafford rose for Juan Mata.
As one.
Yeah, when he was substituted after, I thought, a phenomenally creative, probing, intelligent game. So happy for that gent, David, who fits into even on a team you hate, there's always a player you love. Exemption rule. At Jack Lint 1984 tweeted us, should describe Juan Mata as osculable, an adjective that means that can be kissed. He's the most osculable player in English Premier League football right now, I think. You talked about Rooney's great comments. Van Gaal gave us some Dutch wisdom at the end of the game, David.
In what for world we live?
And what is this world twisted, David?
Said Louis van
I
Gaal.
want that as my needle point. What
In
is this
what
world?
for world we live? I want that T-shirt. I want to remove my T-shirt, and I wanted to say that.
I also loved how the interviewer said, "What did you see that made you realise this was going to be a top draw performance for United?" And he looked at the camera with his boggle eyes, and he just went, made this noise. And I don't speak Dutch, but I think it translates as, it turns out it was all Di Maria's fault all this time. Next for United, Liverpool at Anfield, massive game, present-day aspirations, the mist of history, and two of the most finely attuned comedic managerial minds colliding, David. Can't wait for Sunday.
It's amazing stuff. You know, we're moving. Manchester United remain in fourth, Rog. This amazingly crunched up table right now. Chelsea on 64, City just 6 points behind, 58, Arsenal on 57, United on 56, Liverpool on 54, Southampton and Tottenham not out of it. We've almost got a 7-team mini-league,
As you
Rog.
say, as your wise man once said, in what for world we live.
In what for world we live. Amazing stuff, Rog. Okay, down in London, my beloved Chelsea 1, Southampton 1. Diego Costa, started the scoring in the 11th minute, heading home his 18th league goal of the season. Just 7 minutes later, Nemanja Matic took down Sadio Mane inside the area, and Dusan Tadic, it was an all-Serbian affair, Rog, converted the ensuing penalty. The second half saw Saints keeper Fraser Forster, had a great game, turn away a barrage of Chelsea shots to keep the score 1-1.
Yeah, very interesting, Dave. Chelsea, phenomenal, league leading, but still it's a grim toil of glory.
Yeah.
Mourinho continues an odd balance between circling the wagons, burning all bridges, scorching the earth, and quirky, surreal charm offences. Not always easy to watch them. It's not always easy to know what the hell is going on, but it's working. It is working, kind of. They started off in this game on the front foot. They looked to bloody Southampton, and a goal came within 11 minutes from the most unexpected of sources.
Yeah, Diego Costa. Yes. For a guy who scored 18 league goals, there's certainly been a few people worrying that his form was certainly trailing off.
I mean, he's been rivaling Aston Villa for impotent goal-scoring form in recent weeks, but he made no mistake unmarked from close range after Hazard sucked in the Southampton defence and Ivanovic was unmarked for the cross. But this is what I love about Ronald Koeman's Southampton, David. That early goal would have sunk most teams. But it appeared to invigorate the Saints. They're so up for a fight and they're so fearless this season, coupled with the fact that this Chelsea team have shown an uncharacteristic inability to hold on to a 1-0 lead.
Yeah, again and again.
Yes, there was reason to be confident. Tadic immediately created a burst of chances. Mane then drew the penalty for Matic. Seeming a bit fallible down the stretch, that lad.
Yeah, Matic, once again, another player who's come back from suspension, not looking quite like the player he was before the suspension.
He's rumoured to be injured.
Yeah.
An ankle sprain he picked up while celebrating a League Cup victory, which he didn't actually play in.
Yeah, I know.
I love modern football.
Yeah, without a doubt. But I think this goes to a problem which is we've been talking about for weeks with Chelsea, is that there's been so little squad rotation. Mourinho is so reliant on this core of players, is that going into a season where they've played a lot of games, they've been alive in a lot of competitions for a very long time. Now they're not. Now they're just in the Premier League. He just hasn't rotated this
Even
team.
a medieval farmer knows you've got to rotate your crops, David.
And he seems desperate not to play anyone else in holding midfield other than Matic. Doesn't want to give Obi Mikel many minutes. Certainly the experiment with Zuma seems somewhat short-lived, and none of the young players are getting even a look into this Chelsea
So we
squad.
seal a surreal moment of the season. Chelsea fans booing Cesc Fabregas. I mean, it's like a bad trip to watch that. There was a tweet that's got a lot of play from a gentleman who I don't know, at Key Chelsea, who tweeted, "Fabregas is the worst player I've seen in my 42-year-old experience as a Chelsea fan." He's a proper gooner again now, says Fabregas, Davo.
Yeah.
A lot of Arsenal fans now claiming Wenger was right not to buy him back. Can we get a reality check?
Well, look, Fabregas has had moments like this in his career, certainly at Arsenal and at Barcelona and now at Chelsea, where the long season there are certain moments of the season where he's just not at the level that he is some of the time. And I think he's come back from injury. Remember, he's only been back from injury since February the 11th. Certainly, the player we've seen coming back from injury hasn't been the same. But in reality, it's the whole midfield isn't ticking. Ramirez, once again, had a terrible game. Cuadrado, when he came on as a sub, had a terrible game. Hazard spends moments again when he's just checked out of the game for a player with that much ability. And I think he's part of a midfield that isn't really ticking for Chelsea right now. Having said that, I thought that this was a really well-played game. This was a fantastic game of Premier League football. Southampton, I think, raised their standard from recent weeks. Chelsea, I think, raised their standard. And what obscures this 1-1 draw is actually makes me feel a bit better about it. This was actually a very good Chelsea performance, certainly in the second half. And I think that they had chances to go and win it. Not saying that Southampton didn't have a chance to go and win it, but this was two teams going at each other, two very, very good teams.
Right? I say about Cesc, I do draw a straight line between his struggles and Diego Costa's kind of late season impotence. I mean, at the beginning of the season, Diego was like, it's the difference between Jack Nicholson at the beginning of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and at the end. For Jack Nicholson there, it was a lobotomy that caused a difference. I think the difference for Diego is that Cesc was his principal assist master.
Yeah.
He's been cut off like the Germans outside of Stalingrad.
Well, teams do adjust, Rog. Teams adjust to the way that teams play. And Chelsea were getting really good at putting the ball, pinging the ball around very, very quickly on the edge of the area. And you see teams, I saw Burnley do it at Stamford Bridge. They just are playing so close to them, trying not to give the pass at any time on the ball. And they're doing it very effectively. The problem with Chelsea is they've started moving slower and more... it's like they're thinking so hard before they do anything. The speed of Chelsea's passing has just come down and down and down. I felt in the second half, Chelsea pinged the ball around at speed and moved at speed. There was just more movement than we've seen.
Yeah, I mean, teams have worked out with Diego Costa when he elbows you or punches you or tries to you just laugh at him instead of get riled up. There was a beautiful moment when he hit Fraser Forster in the second half and hit Fonte at the same time, and both of them just laughed and patted him on the bum. He'll only punish you if you punish him back, Dave. Teams are ducking out of any kind of conflict and he's crap as a result. But Chelsea finished stronger. Southampton sat deeper and deeper. Fraser Forster, he looks like there's a touch of the Wilding blood in that man. Unbelievable stat. 22 shots Chelsea had in that game. Half of them, 11 shots, came in the last 20 minutes and he kept them all at bay. The final shot was of a cringing Jose Mourinho as John Terry clipped the ball wide, his face showing none of the happy countenance one would expect of a manager whose team are 6 points clear with a game in hand and better goal difference than all those who pursue them.
I think if they play as well as they did on Sunday, it's going to be tough to catch them. But some of the teams pursuing can play a perfect game. The two games that loom heavily on the horizon, April 18th at home against Man United, Rog, and the following weekend, April 26th, away at Arsenal. I think Chelsea's this season in the Premier League will be decided by those two games. Okay, Rog, moving on. Burnley 1, Manchester City 0. What? Burnley 1, Manchester City 0. The Clarets repel parent company for now from an ebullient Turf Moor, courtesy of a 61st minute
Middle Earth
George Boyd screamer as City float further adrift of Chelsea. Burnley moves into 18th place within one spot of Premier League survival. A game to warm the heart, not just of Chelsea fans, Rog. It's really tough, unless you're a Man City fan. If you love football, you love what's going on at Burnley
Turf
right now.
Moor, that's my Disneyland, Dave.
Disney World, you have the happiest place in Middle Earth.
Today we are all Burnleys.
Yeah.
I love Burnley. I mean, in that first half, they were exposed again and again by City's quality. But from kick-off, they aspired to knock the ball around and assume the kind of countenance of a team that's free of the pressure of relegation, even though they're utterly mired in it. Not surprisingly, their manager is a ginger. Doesn't get picked up at the bars because we all covet him just too much and we fear his rejection. Sean Dyche. He said, City have got some great players, there's no doubt about that. They can cut you open in a second, but if you press them and get in their faces, they don't really like it. If you tackle them hard, play a few long balls, you'll find they are not used to it. At Nate tweeted us to say, but the secret of Burnley's success is Dave Fishwick has clearly offered the entire squad jobs if they get relegated. Hashtag minibus, hashtag safety net. But City had all of the possession, most of the ideas, until the final third, when that idea seemed to be get the ball to Kun Aguero and hope they can make crap happen. By the way, about Aguero, we did an Irish tribute to Irish football yesterday and we made a huge mistake, David.
Yeah. We forgot the greatest Irish player in the Premier League, Rog. Sergi Oh, Aguero. He's a wonderful player. Great tribute to Ireland. Call him up.
I don't know how he's not made the team.
I know, don't know.
Burnley, they press like terriers. And you'd hope as a City fan that the team had the guile to unpick and undo that kind of pressure. But God, how they toiled. Yaya Toure could not have appeared less interested if he was like a 15-year-old teenager who just wanted to play Xbox and not do his homework. And all that pressing in the second half, all of that vigour paid off from a set piece.
Well, set piece won by Danny Ings with a fantastic run, Rog. Too much for Di McAllis, who hacked him down. Danny Ings, by the way, what an impressive player he's become. Great Premier League player. On the edge, I would say, of an England call-up as well, Rog.
Yeah, and from the free kick, Vincent Kompany, just a beautifully weighted assist.
Yeah, perfect. Right on the half volley for George Boyd, Rog.
Super creepy Radamel Falcao.
Yeah.
With a beautiful, beautiful finish. City's only idea in terms of a response was to wheel on Frank Lampard.
Yeah.
Who I'm now beginning to think, Davey, is a bit like Kerry Russell in The Americans. A deeply embedded sleeper agent.
For Chelsea Football Club.
Yeah, City, I mean, nothing. They'd had a last-minute penalty denied. What conspiracy, Mr. Mourinho. And minibus rentals saw in the greater Burnley region. As a result, I'm sure you're worried for Manuel Pellegrini.
I'm worried. Honestly, in the post-match press conference, his eyes were so red, Rog. It honestly looked like he'd been crying for half an hour.
He's so old.
Yeah.
So roomy-eyed, so confused and so defeated. And if you're a City fan, you know you've tried Roberto Mancini, the cold, detached, kind of dictator manager. You've tried that approach. You've now tried the exact opposite, the cuddly old, slightly senile Uncle Pellegrini. What next? Because they've got so much talent, so many resources. Slightly dodgy transfer policy when you look at the Negredos, the Navases, the Fernandinhos, the Jovetiches they've kind of piled up and chewed through. This is just a team with massive resources who still need to capture a certain gravity to ballast their intentions. I can see, Davo, a future in 20 years where New York City FC are the parent company and Manchester City are just like the distant kind of AAA outpost. Burnley, Southampton, Tottenham and Arsenal now await. They're like a little craft in rough seas to me, Burnley. And I've got a feeling they're going to float about as well as a Dave Fishwick minibus in such a situation.
Yeah, I think they're going to be safe. They're certainly better than three teams around them, Sunderland, Leicester and Queen's Park. Raisins, Rog. Talking of the future, the Manchester derby, April 12th, Man United versus Man City, a game in which Man United could go ahead of Man City in the table, depending on the results over the next couple of Premier League weekends, Rog. Amazing stuff. Okay, Arsenal 3, West Ham 0. Arsene Wenger's side move within a point of second place after a series of surgical moves see them past the Hammers at the Emirates. Goals from Olivier Giroud, Aaron Ramsey and Mathieu Flamini give the Gunners their 7th win in the last 8 games. Another very impressive performance from the Gunners.
An extraordinary game for them. And because it was a routine Arsenal win, a comfortable 3 points shorn of drama. When did we last see Arsenal win one of those?
Yeah.
Even though at the outset it seemed that the Gunners might struggle to impose themselves without Arseblog telling them what to do from the stands.
Yeah.
Referee, kill him!
Kill him!
They had all the movement, they had all the good intention, they had the feints, the flicks, but their best chances kept falling to the feet of Theo Walcott to wander away. It's fascinating to watch him. He's just 26, just turned 26.
Yeah.
You think he's much older. He's like the Josie Altidore. He's been around forever. He used to be Arsenal's key threat, but he's had injuries. He's been sidelined. He's returned to an Arsenal that's packed full of ways to menace opponents. 15 Arsenal players have now scored this season, more than any other side. West Ham had very little to counter. They tried to break through Sacco, but Giroud right on half-time with a meaty blast. I don't know why there aren't more goals like that. His 5th goal in 5 Premier League appearances against West Ham. At Iowa Me Alaska said, Vogue by Madonna should be a compulsory song to play in the wake of any Giroud goal so that he can celebrate #strike oppose a comprehensive victory.
Yeah, and with the way Arsenal are playing right now, Rog, 1 point behind City, I believe they are now the major title threat to Chelsea, as they should have been all season. They were my prediction to win the Premier League.
Davey. You're not alone, because Jose Mourinho said that in his post-match press conference, that Arsenal 7 points back are in this title race. Is that not just the ultimate kind of like backhanded undermining of Manchester City, or do you believe it?
I think that it's more likely to be if we're going to look at the negative of it, to be a little bit of a goading of Arsene Wenger, trying to put some pressure on Arsenal, less than it is trying to insult Manuel Pellegrini. He's got enough against him right now. But significantly, Chelsea do go away to Arsenal this season, and that game, so Arsenal could really, that would be a classic 6-pointer. So I think that game looms large on the horizon. But Arsenal are just frankly playing great football. A team to beat Chelsea this season is going to have, one of the teams below them, is going to have pretty much a perfect finish, assuming that Chelsea are going to win a certain number of games, draw a certain number of games, might lose one more. I got to tell you, Arsenal are the kind of team that one could imagine having a perfect season.
We've seen the Arsenal of West Ham, but we've also seen the Arsenal of Monaco.
Yeah.
But this was the 8th home win on the run for Arsene Wenger's team. For the first time, they've achieved that at the Emirates. I love the tweet from Guardian journalist Barney Renee before the game. He said, 5 minutes to kick off. Emirates Stadium, already a white-hot cauldron of not really paying much attention.
I would go as far as to say, and this is a statement of where Arsenal have been in previous seasons, at this point of the season. I know they've led the league, but at this point of the season, I think this is one of Arsenal's best chances to actually win the Premier League in years.
Nonsense.
One of their best chances.
In other Arsenal news, Gideon Zelalem, 18-year-old, who recently took United States citizenship, has been called up for the German under-18 team. At D MacIrish tweeted us and said, Germany make blatant attempt to start World War III.
Rog, what a fascinating situation that is. Okay, Swansea 0, Liverpool 1. The Brodges men win their 5th straight behind a 68th minute Jordan Henderson, well, wonder strike. I would say lucky strike, I'd think more appropriate. The Reds remain just 2 points behind United for 4th place.
Liverpool, why? You had just 28 points after 19 matches. Balotelli was becoming undone. Brendan Rodgers was fearing the sack. I was loving every second. And then you lost at Old Trafford December the 14th and have gone on to just gorge yourself on points. 30 points out of a possible 36 since then, Davo.
Yeah.
Drawn, win-win, draw, win-win-win, draw, win-win-win-win-win-win. God, it was an amazing victory, this, to me. Because Liverpool were dreadful in that first half. Absolutely dreadful. Daniel Sturridge yet to resummon his sharpest form, but Raheem Sterling, to get Sturridge in the team, has been forced out to the flank, and Liverpool seem a little imbalanced as a result. And they had to rely on a deeply maligned player, Simon Mignolet, in goal, who's just one-handedly kept Swansea from grabbing the game by the throat, but they found a way to get the job done.
Yeah. Found a way. I mean, the goal from Henderson, very, very fortunate. The ball really ricocheting off his shin.
It was Jordi Amat who attempted to slide tackle him, which turned out to be the worst decision since that woman decided to let Chris Brown impregnate her. They forced the ball off the Liverpool player's right leg. It went into this looping bloop over the head.
Yeah, bounced, hit the ground and then bounced.
Lucas Fabianski in goal as Jordan Henderson, as Big Snooze tweeted us, tried to wheel away as if he'd intended it the whole time. AJ Barnold tweeted us to ask you, Davo, is a tackle shot called a tackot? A shackle?
I think a shackle is fantastic.
Well,
it is a shackle.
It's probably shackle of the season.
It was a great shackle of the season.
Great article in the Liverpool Echo where the Brodge explained there's physical and psychological reasons why my side performed strongly during the spring. He said, the staff and I, it's very big of him to include the staff in that, the staff and I have a periodised programme set out from day one right through the rest of the season, an individualised programme that balances physical training with a real emphasis on the mental side of the sport. And the thing I find most amazing...
Well, so he planned to only get 28 points from the first 19 games. It's all part of the plan.
It was all part to lull in morons like me to just gorge ourselves on our Schadenfreude.
Yeah.
And then he could laugh at our own laughter and turn it into our faces. What I find so amazing about Liverpool, Davo, is that behind the scenes, Raheem Sterling and Jordan Henderson are both renegotiating contracts, waiting for new kind of massively inflated offers. Yet the club's focus on the field remains absolutely perfect. Hendo has scored the opening goal in Liverpool's last 3 games, and now United away. Quick word on Swansea. The English Literary Trust, they have an annual project to encourage reading, which I love. They get one footballer from every team to come to a photo shoot and reveal their favourite books of all time. Mm-hmm. Frank Lampard chose Andrew Marr, The Making of Modern Britain. Amazing book.
Good book.
Ben Davies of Spurs.
Good Tory, Frank Lampard, by the way. He's an excellent Tory, English Conservative.
Ben Davies of Spurs chose Damn United by David Peace. Joey Barton oddly pretended he'd read Plato's Republic and held that up to the camera, which I find that amazing. And then somehow Swansea sent John Joe Shelby, Davo, as their elected representative. He turned up at the photo shoot, forgot to bring a book, so went back to his car and emerged with Swansea City's quiz book. That's his favourite book of all time. And then
It's a very good quiz book,
and
Rog.
then it's really well written. It's very pacey. And then admitted to journalists he'd not read a book since he was a child.
Yeah, 2 huge games coming up for Liverpool, Rog. You said at home against Man United, then away at Arsenal. Massive games for all the sides involved. Sunderland 0, Aston Villa 4. Rog, let me repeat that. Sunderland 0, Aston Villa 4. Tim Sherwood's goal machine pumped 4 past a pulseless Sunderland and sealed Gus Poyet's face. Bye-bye, Gus. Dick Advocat, Rog, another Dutchman, takes over a side mired in a very real relegation battle.
Oh, Tim Sherwood is to goal machines what Gloria Estefan was to Miami Sound machines.
Yeah.
I got to say, maybe, I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but maybe it was the visit for me. I interviewed Brad Guzan last week. Maybe I've become a blessing, not a curse, because Aston Villa scored as many goals in the first 18 minutes of that game as they had in their previous 12 away league game.
Yeah, they'd scored 15 goals in their entire season before that game. They then upped it to 19, almost respectable.
There were goals here from Charles Atlas,
Yeah.
Ralph Macchio, Matt
Yeah.
Murdoch and George McFly.
Yeah.
The Sunderland fans went apoplectic, screaming at an utterly defeated Gus Poyet, who slumped like a man who knew if only Josie had stayed, the score would have been 4-4. Thousands of Sunderland fans left the stadium at the 30-minute mark. At Culkin, the Times journalist in the North East, tweeted that he interviewed a lifelong Sunderland fan, David Fenwick, who told him, "I stayed to the end just so I could miss the traffic."
I mean, Sunderland fans have a very dramatic way of getting rid of their managers. Remember the scenes with Paolo Di Canio right at the end? These scenes with Gus Poyet were
bring
just
him back
unbelievable.
now. I mean, Ellis Shaw, we should say, the little talked of American owner of this team, has just appointed his 5th manager in 6 humiliating seasons. This is a club that are so proud and mean so much to that area. 40,000 passionate football fans fill the stadium every week. They have a right to go absolutely bonkers because it is a club that seemed directionless. The new man for the job, you mentioned him, Dick Advocat. Dutch managers, David, they're the new Scottish managers in the Premier League. Everybody wants one. Ex of the Netherlands and Rangers. 2 most important things you need to know. 1, yes, he has an antagonistic relationship with Louis van Gaal.
Yeah.
And 2, he feared going bald, so he not only had a hair transplant, but he became the face for a hair care company, Laser Aesthetic. Mm-hmm. What does that tell you about a man? I don't need to answer that question. At Dante Florence tweeted, "Behind every great man is a greater woman," and he attached the article that said, Dick Advocat's wife has ensured his tenure will only last 9 matches. His wife won't allow him to work abroad for a long time. She said he has to be at home within 2 months.
Interesting.
He probably will be when Sunderland are in the Championship. Rumours that the club are hoping for Sam Allardyce to be their next long-term manager, which I hope comes true because Sunderland is an area that is just renowned for pies.
Yeah. Yeah, very different approach that Sunderland are taking versus the approach that Villa took with Sherwood, a manager who's clearly there to fire up the team and fire up the fans. But Sunderland, with Di Canio and Poyet, that sort of backfired that approach for them, going for a more experienced, reliable set of hands. A very different approach for Sunderland, but they're in a fight with these teams around them. Burnley, Aston Villa, Hull.
If Josie was still there, he could have been player manager.
Yeah, it could have been. It would have been excellent, Rog. In other games, Palace 3, QPR 1, Alan Pardew's side, Cruz, Rog. Alan Pardew's side, Cruz.
Super Alan.
Behind goals from Wilfred Zaha, James MacArthur and Joel Ward. QPR continued to take on water and slipped to 19th in the table. We should mention that amazing goal scored by Matty Phillips.
Which was amazing because it was from 41 yards. And it was even more amazing because he then had to run 41 yards to do the
ball out of the
ritual.
back of the
He was
net.
obligated to
3-1
pick the
down.
ball out of the net and run back. I've never seen a guy run from such distance.
Leicester 0, Hull 0, the Premier League's glamour game of the weekend. Scoreless at the King Power Stadium, while they failed to score 5, Hull City City players did manage to earn a yellow card, including 2 for Tom Huddleston, who was sent off in the 72nd minute.
The great part of that game was the post-match press conference with Nigel Pearson, the Leicester manager. Remember him?
Oh
from
my God, you
such
played it for me
exploits
yesterday.
as strangling a Crystal Palace player in their game during the game.
Yeah.
This week, after the game, a journalist was brave enough to say, "Is your season at Leicester waxing and waning?" And he answered with absolute disgust, and then after answering, muttered under his breath,
Waxing and waning. What a prick.
he said prick, while staring at the journalist with such hatred. My sphincter tightened while I was just watching it on YouTube the next day from 5,000 miles away. He is proper intimidating.
Proper hard. West Brom 1, Stoke 0. Tony Pulis gets over on his former club thanks to Brown Aday's 5th goal in his last 8 games. The win lifts West Brom 8 points clear of the relegation zone. Good for them, Rog. And then...
Talking about the relegation zone.
No, Rog, rubbish. Everton 3. Certainly, if Arsenal, in your mind, it's rubbish that they're contending for the Premier League title. The idea that Everton are going to go down is ridiculous. Everton 3, Newcastle 0. Roberto Martinez defies the Roger Bennett curse and delivers a decisive win at Goodison just one day after Roger's film about him premieres on NBC Sports Network. Rog?
Well, I carried on my new strategy, Davey.
Yeah.
Of not watching Everton Football Club.
Well
the one
done.
I talked about at South by Southwest. My new strategy.
This might be the end of you watching Everton. You might never watch them
That's
again.
what it takes, Dave. Radical optimism didn't work. My new strategy is to not watch them play. And I know this makes it seem quite arrogant and self-centered about like what I do actually in fact informs how the team end up. But it's worked twice. I've not watched 2 games live and they've won both of them. This game, I was overwhelmed, Dave, with a feeling I'd almost forgotten football could produce, which is joy. I didn't know if watching football could be pleasurable, Dave. Everton worked out how to win after a Europa League game for the first time in 9 attempts this season. Roberto tweaked his lineup, went 4-3-3 with Aaron Lennon and Romelu Lukaku empowered to hurt opponents. Kone playing alongside Lukaku made all the difference. It meant that the Belgian couldn't be double-teamed and kind of marked out of the game. I'll admit the first goal by McCarthy, a little bit match-fixy. But I cannot tell you how happy, how relieved, how remarkable this feeling is. And at Everton Football Club, this bizarre parallel universe we're living in, they could be, by Thursday, the last Premier League team standing in Europe, David.
Would that be like a trophy for you, Rog?
If
Was
they
that
are-
like finishing 4th?
It would feel like that moment in Back to the Future where George McFly at the end is living a suave, remarkably sophisticated life rather than the miserable, beaten down torture of a perpetual kind of hapless victim. That's what it would feel
Biff
like.
is working for him.
Yeah, but I will say,
Yeah.
Biff, you now work for me.
He's polishing his car.
But I will say, I asked Tim Howard on Wednesday last week for this goalkeeper documentary I'm making, and he sat down. I said, Tim, tell me we're not going to get relegated. He looked at me and snorted and then said, we're not going to get relegated. And I've got gripped by fear. I've never been more sure we are going to get relegated when I heard this. But this win, Davo, plus QPR and Sunderland losing and Leicester drawing, made this possibly the biggest weekend of Everton's rather humble, disappointing season.
2014-15 season. In an MLS, Rog, after an exciting first 2 weekends, only 2 teams, FC Dallas and DC United, remain unbeaten and undrawn, although DC has only played 1 game. Some of the league's biggest names have wasted no time putting their fingerprints on the nascent part of this campaign, Rog.
Yeah, Josie's already dared to Josie twice. Bradley to Giovinco to Josie. Give that man a Ballon d'Or, but that is something we're going to see a lot of. But most importantly, Davo, this weekend, America, they framed the Constitution, they put a man on the moon, and now they have a football team playing a home game at New Yankee Stadium.
Yeah.
Calling it home. That is American history in the making. And you were there.
I
It
was
the
there.
43,507
Yeah.
at Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, fantastic atmosphere, Rog. Really amazing
Nothing's
atmosphere.
more American than instant further behind a team yet to play a home game.
Yeah. It was, but it was real atmosphere. It was real atmosphere. And I think it was such a great choice by the league to have the first game against New England, against a Boston team, because the Revolution, and credit to them, sent a lot of fans to the game, big away support area. And every time they were screaming for their team, just the New York fans in attendance just started screaming, Boston suck, Boston suck, Boston
We
suck.
got this
It was just
question
excellent.
from a GFOP, Andrew Mayer. Sent in a beautiful letter. He said, I'm a Chelsea supporter, New York resident. I followed the Lampard train, became an NYCFC fan, as he didn't have an MLS side. went to the game, couldn't wait. The energy, the electricity around the stadium was incredible. But he said, during the game, I became conflicted. I'm a New York transplant, originally from New England. I grew up a Red Sox fan. And as I cheered for my home team, I was suddenly horrified by the chants of
Boston sucks.
Boston sucks. Boston. He said, in one moment, my sky blue tinted glasses were ripped off and smashed. I came face to face with an honest truth. I was in a pinstripe paradise, the very nest of the evil empire. What is a Sox fan to do? I'd say there, David, what is an Arsenal fan to do? What's a real Chelsea fan to do? I don't mean that in a horrible way, but like someone who understands that giving money to NYCFC, you're actually giving money to Manchester City, not you, who's very emotional about things rather than always rational. He asked, can I truly become an NYCFC fan? Well, everyone around me will always trash the baseball team I grew up with.
I think there's a city issue here that you and I, we both love New York City. Passionately love this city. And I think this is a New
It's like the
York
Stoke of the West.
City play. And this was a very New York event. And I've got to credit the team on the field. They played with New York swagger, Rog. For a new expansion franchise, they played with swagger. The goalkeeper, Saunders, played with swagger. The defense, my favorite one, Hernandez, he is a Vin Diesel lookalike at right back, Roger. I love him. And
He's
in
fast and
midfield,
furious.
Diskerud and Villa up front, they have an instant understanding. They are a class apart from everyone else on the field, Rog. And they played with each other with an instant understanding. And this team is going to have swagger. But you got to love New York to love New York City. If you don't love New York, don't go up there. You're not going to love it. If you love New York, you're going to love it. As a Chelsea fan, I can tell you I'm completely comfortable with it. Chelsea have got plenty of money. Manchester City have plenty of money. The money that Davo gives to Manchester City to buy my season tickets isn't going to make the difference.
It's not the season ticket. I'm worried about the hot dog intake, David.
Didn't have a hot dog. In fact, the food was excellent, I have to tell you.
Diskerud.
Lots of healthy choices.
I wonder, most pass attempts, 153. Most completed pass attempts, most touches in MLS this season. David Villa, this is a prediction. He's going to score more than Aston Villa this season. Terrific assist by Ned Grabavoy, who looks to me like super creepy mixed Diskerud. Got to say a word about the field, though, David. Narrow pitches, they're like the new skinny jeans. I think Yaya Touré's waist size is actually wider than the pitch at Yankee Stadium. I mean, when I saw that thing, I imagined Rory Delap, the retired Stoke long throw expert, will be thinking of coming out of retirement. He could fling the ball into the opponent's box and pretty anywhere on that pitch.
Yeah, I think the larger thing that affected the quality of the game, Rog, was the wind. It was very, very windy in the stadium. I think it's going to be an advantage for New York City. Remember San Jose, in their first years, they played on that very narrow pitch up there at
like the narrow
converted
sea.
footballing. At a football stadium, Rog. It's going to be narrow. I think the surface, though, looked better in reality than it did on television. I think it's going to be a great location. It's
When
going to be
Frank
wonderful
Lampard
there.
plays, with his girth, he's just going to block out the whole middle of the field.
Yeah.
Come
Rog.
on, you English muffin.
You love it. Okay. Our guest today, Rog, he's a television producer responsible for award-winning comedies like 30 Rock, love that show, Friends, not heard of that. While his professional life is about making people laugh, his life as a football fan until this weekend is trying not to cry. He supports Arsenal. His new show, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, is now available on Netflix. I have that. We welcome to the pod Robert Carlock from a gypsum mine.
Hi, guys.
Hey, how you doing?
Well, how are you?
So you're down a gypsum mine right now?
Well, you know, a gypsum mine is less of a hole than it is a mountain.
Oh.
So I'm up a gypsum mine, I guess.
I love gypsums.
Yeah.
I do love gypsums.
You love drywall? You love gypsum?
I like Plastercast. I think they're absolutely fabulous. All of your shows, Robert, are about endearing losers who struggle with reality. Was it your comedic sensibility that led you to being an Arsenal fan?
I think. Oh, I was about to. Wow. I think all football fans, right, have that same struggle. That life and football are only as funny as they are sad.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to think that we don't need to have this sort of tribal divisions, do we?
I
Except
agree.
Chelsea. We can all agree, Roger, that Chelsea, that's problematic.
That's so
but,
funny because when we announced you were coming on the show as an Arsenal fan, we got loads of tweets like this one from @Hadji31. Ugh. I really look forward to watching Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. Now it seems gross. #come on you Spurs.
You know, ever since Saul Campbell went to Spurs, I feel like, you know, it's all one big team. It's all loving.
Oh,
We're
so you
all on
love
the same
so you
side,
love
aren't we?
Spurs, You love
like
Spurs. You hate Chelsea. Over to you, Rog.
Yeah, I mean, Kimmy Schmidt, which I've loved watching, it's just an unrelentlessly upbeat piece of television. 30 Rock is just rib-tickling fare filled with joke density. Can you describe to us the essence of what you think people want from a television franchise? Because I think it could be much the same as what makes the English Premier League so comically great.
Yeah. I don't think I've quite cracked what people want, but I know what I like, which is people with ill-formed but very strong opinions trying to sort of take on the world. And I think that mostly describes the managerial point of view of most Premiership teams. You said, what was the phrase you used? Something about losers, I don't know, that led you to Arsenal. People fighting against things that are bigger than them is funny to me. Relegation is funny to me. Like Leicester City has a game in hand right now. I was thinking about, Leicester City's got a game in hand. It's all going to change. It's all going to happen for them. That's a 6-point swing coming up. And I don't know, the futility of it all. Football's so much closer to life than other sports. It can go so sideways. It can turn on such little things. Tim Howard can have 16 saves against Belgium, and you lose. It's hilarious.
Yeah. Alec Baldwin's character on 30 Rock would have been an amazing Premier League owner.
Oh, he should play Stan Kroenke in the made-for-TV movie that I'm working on.
It could have been what Sunderland actually need right now, which is kind of like Paolo Di Canio, but more fascist. I mean, Kimmy Schmidt isn't. There's at the beginning of that. There's 4 wives trapped in an underground bunker with a cultic doomsday leader. I love watching it, and then I realised I love watching it because it was like how I imagine being Liverpool 2 would have been. I think it was possibly the most accurate depiction of what it must be like to be in the locker room with Brendan Rodgers.
You either believe or you don't, right?
So this season, as an Arsenal fan, you've probably gone through a lot of emotions. But right now, after a, frankly, very, very impressive performance this weekend against West Ham, where are you feeling? What are you hoping for? I think you're still contending to win the Premier League this season. How are you feeling about your team?
What I've liked about this Arsenal team this year is I feel like they've had some grit. They've had those matches where, and I know you look at it and you say they go up 2-0 and then they start coasting, but they've ground them out and not given them up. They haven't, at least in the last, as you said, their form has been better the last month or plus. They've gotten results. They haven't squandered points. And I'm so used to squandering points on their part. Beautifully Squandered will be the name of my book that I'm going to write.
The Arsenal story.
About the last few years, at least, with Arsenal.
When Jose Mourinho says Arsenal are in the title race, as he did this weekend, I imagine Arsene Wenger on Sunday afternoon reading the newspapers in his probably his silk smoking jacket.
Yeah. Or his puffer jacket.
He reads that quote in the newspaper and he just involuntarily mutters, "I want to go to there."
I think
Can you go to there?
It must mean so much to Arsene that Jose would say something nice to him. See, Jose, he just treats Arsene like a less attractive girlfriend. He just constantly belittling him in public, and then he turns around and says something nice. And it must he's just manipulating the poor Frenchman. He doesn't know what's happening.
He's goading him. He's goading him without a doubt. So talking of Arsene Wenger, so Arsenal fans seem to divide into 2 camps. Those who are pro-Wenger and believe that the object of the game is to finish 4th, get into Europe and play beautiful football getting there. And those who are incredibly frustrated at Arsene Wenger. And let's leave Piers Morgan aside because I think that colours a lot of people against that camp. But the side who believe that Arsenal, with all of this talent, I do believe they're the best team in the Premier League this year. They're just not leading the Premier League. But believe that they should be doing better and another manager might take them further. Which camp are you in?
Why do they actually camps? Again, it's so divisive. Don't we live in gray areas?
So you're in the grey area. I love that. I believe in grey. I don't believe everything's black and white. Sometimes you feel like Wenger should go, and sometimes you feel like he's the only man for the job.
I do think he knows how to put a team together. And who is it? Who's the alternative? Who are we going to bring in?
Well, Gus Poyet's available now.
What brung you?
Tim Sherwood.
I'm I guess, an arsonist. What? That's not what I meant to say. No, international gratification. I like fires. Also, I support Arsene Wenger.
Suddenly, you being in the gypsum mine is suddenly all coming
Yeah,
together.
it's making sense.
By the way, the FBI do and the CIA both listen to the pod avidly. Was Santi Cazorla the inspiration for Kimmy Schmidt? Because I've watched it a lot, and I can't help the way he's such a joyous little man. I can't help but thinking that.
That's right. Yeah, it may be in some ways. I hadn't thought of that. Subconsciously, I think Santi Cazorla and his worldview, his Weltanschauung, are intricately woven into the DNA of Kimmy Schmidt.
Yeah, Weltanschauung, that's what Per Mertesacker calls his down belows. Which reminds me, how did you first meet Tina Fey? And what was it about your working styles that just clicked together like Koscielny and Mertesacker of last season?
On a good day. Well, I have Koscielny's haircut. We first worked together, met and worked together at Saturday Night Live when she was first a writer, and then she started hosting Weekend Update, and it was I saw some long and sturdy coattails on which to ride. And I produced Weekend Update the first year that she and Jimmy did it, and then I decamped for Los Angeles. I don't know if you've ever been there. It's a nice place.
For Friends, Joey
and,
lured you away.
Yes, right. I wanted to go learn, storytelling and stuff. And thought that I'd be in LA forever. And Tina called up and asked me to come back and run 30 Rock. And my wife and I had a 1-year-old, and we packed a couple bags and went back and said, we'll be back in 6 months. This will be fun. We'll write some stuff for Alec Baldwin and Tracy, and we know it'll be funny. And so that was 8 years ago. So Tina changed my life. She's got me out of the impending disastrous earthquake that California is due for. And why do we work well together? I think we're both hard workers. We both have some German stock. And I don't know, we grind and expect a lot from other people, and our sensibilities are just similar. It's a hard thing to describe. I mean, why are you guys so adorable together? It's because you finish each other's sentences, and you're funny, and you're the same funny.
We've both been persecuted by Germans
I don't
for
know.
centuries.
We both lost family in the Second World War. That's the main reason.
Yep.
I've got to ask. I was watching 30 Rock recently. It's a show that I absolutely properly love, and I was back watching season 3. The John Hamm character who comes in, who is so impossibly good looking. No one ever tells him he's crap at tennis and crap at being a doctor and crap at everything, and he gets away with everything because he's so good looking. Was that based on anyone you know?
Giroud.
Or is it just is it based on anyone individually, or it's a universal truth?
No one will tell Cristiano. That chop move.
Yeah.
You can defend that every time, but he's just so good looking. It's not. It's vaguely based on Roger Bennett, but beyond that.
Robert, you are a very, very funny man. But my beautiful visage and my pert nipples have not got very, very far in life, sadly.
No one's looking at the face. Everyone's just looking at the nipples.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a great question which was sent in by @Angles305, Robert Carlock. You must assemble a sitcom ensemble using 3 or 4 current Arsenal players or coaches. Who'd you choose
Great
and why?
question.
Oh, brother. Now, current is a tough one there, because that means you don't have Arshavin, who's probably the funniest English speaker in the history of the Premiership.
Oh, that could have been like Ellen in Russian. That show would have been as good as that. But go on, he's gone. Who do you have now?
That assistant coach.
Comedy's all about contrasts, right?
Yep.
Different points of view. So I think you get Alexis Sanchez and Mertzacker, right? You got
perfect strangers. Perfect.
You've got different cultural
like
points of view. You've got the little guy and the big guy, and certainly different temperaments. And then current coaches. I read recently that the kit manager at Arsenal has an OBE,
Oh,
which I
that's
think
amazing.
is hilarious.
Order of the British Empire.
I think that guy, because delusions of grandeur are always funny. So you get Vic Akers in there with his OBE.
Vic Akers. Just his legs. We just want him in shorts.
Slapstick. It's the slapstick comedy of Vic Akers.
He's wearing shorts all day, and he thinks he's a knight of the realm. And they have to live together. It's probably some rooming situation. Or maybe Akers adopts the two of them. I thought of a gunner. I don't know.
Son of a gunner. That's so good.
I thought you were remaking Perfect Strangers, but you've just remade Different Strokes.
That's so good.
Is what you've
Or
done.
Webster. I'm not totally sure.
I love it. Arsene Wenger is very Gabe Cotter-esque.
Yeah.
You can make him. And I think Giroud, when I watch him and his stylings, he is very Henry Winkler in the Fonz.
Yeah, I think Wilshire's got a role.
You're just talking about the hair, though.
Yeah, Wilshere can just, in every episode, there's a moment where Wilshere opens the door and he just looks in and he goes, all right. And then he closes the door
Yes!
again and goes, all
Like,
right.
like
Well,
Norm
then
from Cheers.
Then his ankle breaks.
Yeah, and his ankle breaks. Genius. A pratfall ensues.
Wilshere is Norm from Cheers. They're both great guys. They both love to talk. They both love to sup a beer, smoke a cigarette, and organise parties packed with prostitutes.
So true.
Be amazing.
Yeah.
When Tina Fey went for jury duty dressed as Princess Leia,
Yeah.
have you ever gone for jury duty dressed as Princess Leia? I'm asking for producer Lexi, who has to go on jury duty and wants to know if it worked in real life.
Did I ever do that?
Yeah, what was the inspiration for that 30 Rock song?
Well, I was once advised by a lawyer, a woman who worked in the DA's office in New York, to overdress, to look very conservative and wear a suit and a tie and stuff. And I did that once, and it didn't work at all. I was put on a jury instantly. So I think the next step will have to be Princess Leia the next time I'm called. I hope that'll work. Not that I want to shirk my civic duty. I don't believe that I have peers.
Gypsum minds just don't mind themselves, do they, Robert? My favourite line from The Simpsons was when Homer Simpson's advice on getting out of a jury, he just said, just tell the judge you're racist against all people.
So, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt on Netflix. As a television producer, I've never had a show on Netflix. Does it feel different? You know, no ratings, no pilot season, and every show on there is good.
Yeah, excuse me. It does feel different. No, I'd be interested. You only do things for profit, Davo. So yeah, why
ratings and
why
profit?
Would you be involved in this side of the business? But you get more time. You don't have to cut to commercial. I mean, you know what happens to working towards act breaks, right?
Yeah.
You guys are still waiting for this interview to be funny so that you can end it on a high note.
Yeah.
And go to commercial or something.
Yeah.
You guys have sponsors, but just that freedom of not having to always go out on something dramatic, 4 times an episode, to then have people stay around after watching commercials for cars and medications and stuff. It just means a different kind of storytelling.
We admire you, an incredible comedy creator by day, a gypsum miner, dedicated gypsum miner by night, and an Arsenal fan by weekend.
Yeah, and look forward to
Yeah, we'll have
watching.
to go wrong somewhere, right?
And look forward to watching the new show on Netflix. Good luck with that.
Thanks, guys.
Godspeed, Robert.
Lovely guy, Rog. So refreshing to meet an Arsenal fan telephonically who lives in the grey, not in the black or white of Arsene in or Arsene out.
He is a genuinely beautiful bloke.
Lovely. Okay, on to the Ravens. First, from Scott Kenny. My brother and I used to argue about whether a team of Michael Jordans would beat a team of LeBron Jameses. By the way, they would. My question for you, that was from Scott Kenny, not from me. My question for you is, if you had to assemble one team with 11 copies of the same Premiership player, brilliant question, which player would you pick? Let's assume that Roger's team is playing against Davo's team, since the matchup matters a lot. My choice would have to be Branislav Ivanovic. 11 copies of him would be a nightmare to break down defensively and potent enough to be a real threat on the offensive end, mostly via overlaps that he could cross to an incoming Ivanovic. Also, my brother and I agree that Ivanovic seems very likely to have a strong pungent odour, and no one likes guarding the pungent guy. Who would you pick from the current Premiership rosters? Who would you pick all-time from the annals of soccer history? My all-time choice is Dixie Dean. Wow, a bit of Chelsea, a bit of Everton. Rog, this is a great question. What thought process goes into putting this together? Do you go with the all-round player, Rog, as sort of a team of all-round players? Or do you find a specialist who can do the other jobs okay, but can just destroy a team of all-round players, the all-round player playing in that individual position against him, where he would seek advantage?
Well, the player that jumped out at me, Davo, as I was thinking about it, is a world player.
Yeah.
Give me 11 Manuel Neuers.
It's so funny, because that was the first thing that came into my mind, looking at that. And then I substituted out and thought Ibrahimovic.
Oh, I substituted him out and thought Kyle Beckerman.
Yeah.
Could beat everybody. 11 Kyles could beat everybody and also force Putin out of the Ukraine. Back off, Vladimir!
Yeah.
But he wants English Premier League.
Yeah.
So to get your head around that, I kind of went through a process. My immediate thought was 11 Juan Matas. But then I realised that was just the answer
Too
to the
small.
question. Who would be the most fun? We'd probably just sit around and read poetry all day, me and 11 Juan Matas. Then I thought 11 George Boyds, which would be like having my own Dothraki Blood Riders. We might not win, but it would just be awesome. And I settled, Davey, on 11. This might surprise you. On 11, Emre Can.
Wow.
The only thing that can defeat us is if we pass a mirror. We might just stare at ourselves in the mirror all the time. But I think 11 Emre Cans, David, would beat all comers.
Yeah. I mean, I am tempted. Neuer, there's no British equivalent of Neuer, but a good goalkeeper, I think, would, a crap goalkeeper would really, really hurt you. So, and I can't think of an outfield Premier League player who's ever proven themselves to be any kind of decent goalkeeper. So I'm tempted to go with a goalkeeper against your team of Emre Can's. Ivanovic is good, but I think I'm more likely to go with a player who can just dominate his quadrant of the field, his triangle at all times.
Stevie
And I think
Nace.
I'm going with a
Stevie
different
Nace.
Chelsea player. I'm going to go with Nemanja Matic, Rog. A team of Matiches, Rog, I think would be very, very tough to beat.
All time, I'd probably go for 11 Tim Cahill in his prime. Because back then, he could do anything on any part of the field. 2004, 2005, Tim Cahill would just edge out Thomas Gravesen. Mad dog who'd just be probably hilarious.
Yeah, all time, within his era, I think I've got to go with the greatest box-to-box player I ever saw, and that would be Franz Beckenbauer, Rog, der Kaiser. I think would have to be it. But Ibrahimovic, within his era, might be even better, Rog. Okay, great question, though. I'd love to, maybe we ought to speak to the folks at EA Sports FIFA and see how that would work. It might blow up the system, Roger. It might not work. Okay, the winner of the coveted Guinness Men in Blazers poet, philosopher, sucker scribe, Raven of the Week is Cameron Scott from Portland, Maine. While watching soccer this weekend, I couldn't help but notice several commentators' use of seemingly derogatory verbiage towards the ginger race. When players receive slight injuries and they're attempting to walk it off and trying again, Zaha after running into the post in Crystal Palace versus the Raisins, the commentators use the phrase walking gingerly, as if to say that the way he walks or runs resembles a certain weakness exhibited only by gingers. I take great offence to this, and I think all other gingers should too. Can you explain the origins of the phrase walking or running gingerly and put to rest any misconceptions of the intestinal fortitude of gingers? 50% Scott, 50% Pole, 100% ginger. Cameron Scott. Oh, great question. Great, Raven.
Yep. I mean, an easy answer. Mm-hmm. Gingerly comes from the early 16th century, in the sense of daintily, mincingly, from the Latin genitus, which is interesting. The word that gave us genitals, you would know it as Davo first comes to mind, always on the top of your mind.
Genitalia.
It comes from the word for well-born originally, and then it combined with the Anglo-Saxon word gingra for young person. And about 1,000 years ago, it combined with the old French gensor, meaning delicate or dainty. I looked up in a book I love at these times to look at, the Dictionary of French and English tongues.
Oh, I thought it was the Swansea quiz book.
It's the same book, just different cover.
Okay,
the Dictionary of French and English tongues was printed in 1611. And the author Randall Cotgrave wrote that gentleman means neatly, sprucely, finely, comptly, adroitly, quaintly, handsomely, and gingerly. And in the last 10 years, English commentators have turned it into a euphemism for crapped out. That's how language happens.
So it has nothing to do with people with red hair with ginger hair, Rog.
No, because they're too busy getting picked up at bars to be playing football.
Yeah, okay, very good. Thank you, Cameron, for that question. Your weekend looks like this. Manchester City versus West Brom. That's 8:45 a.m. this Saturday on NBCSN. Newcastle versus Arsenal. That's 11 a.m. Saturday on NBCSN. Britain, when are you going to put your clocks forward? And Liverpool versus Man United, huge game, 9:30 a.m. Sunday on NBCSN. In MLS, New York Red Bulls versus DC United, that's 5 p.m. Sunday on ESPN2. The New York Red Bulls, who play in New Jersey, Rog, versus DC United, who do actually play in DC, 5 p.m. Sunday on ESPN2. Okay, there are many ways to connect to us. One is through our Amazon Emporium, which helps keep the show going. Anytime you go on Amazon for items big or small, just click off the Emporium page, and Men in Blazers gets a tiny percentage that allows us to cover the cost of creating the show. What are you putting in the Emporium this week, Rog?
An album.
Yeah.
In honour of St. Paddy's Day.
Uh-huh.
Veed and Fleece. by great Irishman Van Morrison.
Excellent.
It's his 8th album from 1974. It's a stunning piece of poetry about love and loss. It's his forgotten masterpiece. There's a single track on it called Comfort You, which is possibly the most beautiful song I've ever heard. I wanted to walk down the aisle to it at my wedding, but when I entered the room, the CD stuck and skipped a track as I entered the room, so it didn't happen. But whenever you're feeling lost, lonely, or detached from the world, you can listen to that song and it will heal everything that tortures you.
Rog, I'm putting in a pair of sneakers. I love these sneakers. Stan Smith 84 Lab.
I own a pair of those.
They're grey with a sort of a green back, made by Adidas. They're just such beautiful shoes. Here are them in the box right now. Unfortunately, there's only one. This isn't good for Men in Blazers revenue, Rog, because there's only one pair left in Amazon, and the only way they're going to fit you is if you're a size 8 or you're less than a size 8 and you want to wear several pairs of socks on them. There's one pair left on Amazon in a size 8. If you're a size 8, go and buy them. The Stan Smith 84 Lab in grey by Adidas. Okay, Rog, another way to connect to us, meninblazers.wikispaces.com / that's a wonder of the modern world. You also go to our website, meninblazers.com, where you can sign up for our newsletter, The Raven, which we produce with our partner, Guinness. Follow us on Twitter, at Men in Blazers, at Rog Bennett, at Embassy Davies, on Instagram, Men in Blazers, or Embassy_Davies. Go to our Facebook page, lots of great stuff there. We've got a subreddit, Rog, meninblazers.reddit.com. That's maintained by GFOP's Akshay, Calvin, and Alex.
Thanks, people.
And we now have a Spotify account. Also, search men_in_blazers. Our second Men in Blazers mixtape is now up as the Champions
coming
League
out soon.
edition. You can always send your Ravens to the crap part of Soho. Weather's getting springier, Rog. The Ravens are showing up on the ledge outside our window, and you can always email us at meninblazers@gmail.com.
We've got a beautiful week this week.
Okay.
We've got a big special extra pod coming up on Thursday.
Oh, right, the one
with
we did.
GFOP John Green.
Yes.
Who's coming into the Panic Room
Yeah.
to give us a cuddle, talk about Liverpool Football Club, and talk about his new movie, Paper Town. Cannot wait for that.
Can't wait for that. Sorry, I'm going to miss it down in Disney World, Rog. Venderpunkt.
War Pig.
Who wants to sex Matumbo?
Explosion.
Courage.